Hello. So welcome everybody to Brown Bag Lunch. Good to have everybody here, hopefully. Please remember to turn off your cell phones so that they do not ring, except I'm keeping mine on because I have some important museum calls I'm trying to deal with. So if mine rings, forgive me. But if you turned yours off, we'd appreciate it. That way, when things appear on YouTube, we sound a little bit more professional than we do with everybody's cell phones ringing, so thank you. Alrighty, so today we have birthday cards going around for two of our favorite people, Linda Wood and Jack Willey. Jack Willey, as you know, is our president, and Linda Wood is Wood without an S, right?
I didn't know that.
That's all right.
Okay,
I'm sure she runs into that all the time.
This isn't showing what I wanted to show.
Okay, so I just have a couple announcements. First of all, you all know that this is the first day of the fair, right? Sort of the first day of the fair, and the parade starts tonight at 6 o'clock. So I hope that you have your blanket and your lawn chair parked out in somebody's lawn so that you can watch the parade and that we support the parade, because a lot of people work hard on that, and it's just a great beginning to the fair. So that is tonight. But that being tonight, we thought that this would be a good day to talk a little bit about fairs. And because we're the Historical Society, we want to talk about fairs of the past. Just so you know, we're having a little computer problem.
Yeah.
Imagine that. I have a lot of pictures in the computer, but they're not coming up right. So anyway, we'll just look at what there is and hear what there is to hear about the fair back in the day. And hopefully some of you will have fair stories that you want to share along the way. So be thinking, because maybe we will have time for that. So anyway, I appreciate Nancy and Karen for helping us out. Now, do remember, if Dixie hasn't given you a ticket, a pass for the fair, if you're working either in the machine shed or in the lobby, you need to have a pass so you can get into the fair for free. Okay? If you're working in the main museum, if you signed up to work in the main museum, hopefully Kara has called you by now, because we are not going to have the main museum of the fairgrounds open for the fair this year. We are trying to cooperate with the Fair Board, and they just would like to have it closed for this year, so the main museum won't be open. Okay.
I messed it up again.
That's all right. We'll just look at pictures whenever they come up. May not go along with what we're talking about.
Oh, there we go. All right.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so we talked about the tickets and the machine shed, and hopefully just listening a little bit today will give you an appreciation of the wonderful history for the Jackson County Fair. We have had a fair in Jackson County since 1854. Every single year, I'm told, and that's just a wonderful record that most counties cannot match. So we're really grateful. We're really grateful for that, and all the time and effort that's gone on. So I have a whole program written about the history of the fair, and then this morning I looked at this one file that said half century of fun and competition. And it's the 50th year anniversary of the fair where it is today, on the fairgrounds where it is today. The 50th year, it's in 1999. And it was a wonderful article that was written by Jack Marlowe. And Jack Marlowe is so fun, and he just puts things in perspective. So instead of using my notes, I'm going to use his article. Because he just says exactly the same thing in a little bit better way. So like I said, it'll be the 50th year on the present grounds when he wrote this article, and he talks about the special events that will be planned, and says, however, the Jackson County Fair has been held for many decades at various locations. And it's just kind of fun to know where some of these places were. So he starts out by talking about the Jackson County Agricultural Society, and they are credited with sponsoring the first county fair in 1854. Well, we don't have a lot of pictures of that to show you. So,
actually, there was something in 1933.
1933? Well,
1800 attended the Achievement Show.
Yeah, well, we're talking about 1854, which is a little before that.
After that.
No.
Oh, 1933. Yeah, okay.
So between Nancy and I today, you know, forgive us. So we're just gonna have a good time and make it happen. But he talks about the very first fair in 1845. It was put on by something called the Jackson County Agricultural Society. And it was in October, and it was on a 20-acre plot on the east side of Maquoketa, and guess where? It was at where the old Milwaukee Depot ended up, which is right at the end of this street, right? So if you just go out to the parking lot and drive down the Platte Street, right there is where the fairs were to begin with. 20-acre plot. They rented the land from 7 Livermore, and they had livestock. It was shown in the open air because there was nothing there, right, just a field. They tied the cattle and the horses to posts, and they had some pens for hogs and things like that. But the highlight of the entire thing was was that they were able to display a mechanical corn planter. This was the first time that farmers in our area had seen a mechanical corn planter, and so according to Jack, some of the farmers thought that it had possibilities. And we know where it went for that. So the fair was very successful, lots and lots and lots of people. So the next year they had the fair in the very same place in 1855. And excuse me, at that time they had laid out a half-mile racetrack so that they could have harness racing and things like that. So it had expanded again. Then it says, and I think this is wrong, Jack, it says in 1859 and 1860, the fair was held in Andrew. That was the only time in all of these years that it was not held in Maquoketa. And he says that that's because it was the county seat. And it was not, the county seat did not come back to Andrew until 1861, when the Civil War started, at the time of the Civil War. And so something's wrong with the dates maybe. Okay, this time when it came back, 30 acres on the east side of Maquoketa, just across the Highway 64 from the present fairgrounds, they purchased the site for $2,000 in 1867. Okay, so you know where that was? Where the old, some of us remember the old golf course. Okay, that was actually the next site of our fair. They purchased it for $2,000 in 1867. And it was interesting to me, in Jack's article, he said that farmers from 9 Clinton counties bordering Jackson County came to be involved in our fair. I thought that's pretty neat. So then they had a project of turning the fairgrounds into a municipal investment of Maquoketa, and it was brought before the voters so that it could be a permanent part of Maquoketa, right? It failed by 38 votes. They voted down a permanent fairgrounds. So, not to be outdone, the group reorganized. And in 1885, they reorganized, like I said, under the name of the Jackson County Fair Association. So that was 1885. And they purchased that fairgrounds that we're talking about, the old fairgrounds, on the south side of East Platte Street, okay? Where the golf course was. Okay. So by the turn of the century, now they owned the land, and so they made improvements, right? They built fences, and it says by the turn of the century that they had some of the finest exhibit buildings anywhere in Iowa, and one of the best half-mile tracks anywhere in Iowa. And they had their investment almost paid off, so they were really doing well. Things were going good for the fair. But then 1930 happened. And what happened in 1930? The Great Depression, right? So the Depression started along with, as you know, a devastating drought that was in this area at the time, and that was just financial disaster for the organization. They could not pay their debts, and they kept having fairs, but they were not able to pay their debts. Their charter expired in 1931. At that time, they were $5,000 in debts, and so they just had to come to an end. Okay, 1931, still had to have a fair, right, because there's been one every year. The fair was taken over by the Timber City Legion Post Number 75. The American Legion took over, and they had a fair on that site. It was held in late December. There was no midway. There was no carnival, no anything like that going on. And however, either in spite of that, or because of that, however it was, they had attendance records that were broken for all time, even though they didn't have that part going on. So then by November of 1933, the county gave it to the city of Maquoketa, and it was called the Maquoketa Recreation Association of 3,000, and they did it for $3,300, and they had a one-day fair only in 1934, and it was under new ownership. By 1935, now, so understand that this is on the golf course, right? They're still having the fair there, and then when the fair wasn't going on, they just played golf all around the fair. And Judge Jensen was just all part of that, and he said that's where he first played golf, and that it really became an addiction of his, and he played golf ever after that. So if Nancy goes down a little bit, let's go through just some more of the pictures. So go slow.
Okay.
Okay, so 1868, that was early on, right? That is a circus parade, as you can see, down Main Street. Can you tell what building that is in? That is in the background?
Ben Jacobs.
The what?
Ben Jacobson's building.
No?
On
No
Pleasant,
stairs.
I'm not sure.
Pleasant and Main.
Might be, but it doesn't have the stairs going up to the upstairs, and there's a few things that are missing. So I wasn't sure where it was, but it was on our Main Street. And then a trick question. Okay, Nancy. Okay, so we have a fairgrounds that has very few buildings, if any buildings, but all of the merchants wanted to support the fair, so they would have their booths. One of the main people, one of the main businesses that came to the fair was the Bellevue Piano Company that we've talked about a lot of times. And so we're really proud of that old picture that we have of the Bellevue Piano Company at our fair. And you know, they thrived in Bellevue for quite a long time. And I think that's a player piano where the little girl is sitting, trying to blow it up and look at it. And in one day, they sold 313 player pianos in one day. They shipped them out. There was a railroad spur that went through that they shipped them out on. They also took some to the river and shipped them out on river boats, but that was their very best day. Okay. And there is another, this is a Maquoketa company, the Brady Electrical Company, with Delco batteries and that sort of thing. They always had a booth at the fair.
They had suits on too.
Yeah, suits on, and it was probably cold, and it was probably hot.
What year is that? 30s?
And you know what, some of these pictures don't have dates. And if I didn't put a date, the pictures weren't dated, so it's just
I
approximate.
knew that family.
Did you?
And my grandfather's brother-in-law, actually, that ran it.
Awesome, awesome. So any of you, if you have comments, please add them. Okay. So, you know, a big part of Jackson County were the old settlers. They met for years and years, and this is in 1901, as you can see, in a building that was on the east end of that fairgrounds, the golf course, fairgrounds. And just, I love this lady in the hat. Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that. She's going to the fair in 1910. She's got her hat on and she's all decked out in her white dress. There's another big hat back here. Think of how we go to the fair today. A tank top and a pair of shorts, and you know, that's kind of it. So that's just quite a difference.
Well,
the men in their straw hats.
They're all white dresses, and you know the fair was muddy and dirty.
Yeah, but they wore white dresses in the summertime back then. And those are long dresses to the ground.
Right.
So you know they got a little dirty by the time they got home. Anyway, it's just a fun picture. You see bowler hats, you see straw hats that some of the men wear.
And over on the right is lampshade type hat.
Yeah, isn't that neat? I bet that's straw, don't you think?
Looks
But,
like it.
yeah.
Well, you can't straw in the summer. You know,
You know.
straw in the summer, felt in the winter.
Okay, yep, that's the way it was. All right, so this is also early on. This is the old fairgrounds where the golf course was on the south side of East Platte Street. You see the bleachers that they had built, and that was all done with volunteers, did all of that. And the little thing in the middle, that little pointed thing, I think you can see the racetrack. They have the half-mile track going around. And I think that that's where they set to call the races and that sort of thing. Sort of a lookout post. But, and I think that this picture says it's a ball game, yeah, a ball game. And so they had a lot of things at the fair. And that's another picture of the kind of the very same thing, only you get a very better view of the racetrack. But again, all of those things were done with volunteer, donated lumber, donated things, and volunteers to provide the labor because there was no money to be, to be spent.
Look at the buggy.
Yeah, isn't the buggy cool? In fact, I just have to say, somebody just sent us a picture of a buggy just like that, interested in donating it to us, but the cover is, just all shredded, and I don't know that we would ever be able to replace it. So we're thinking about that.
I think we
Phil
can.
says we don't have room. So we're thinking about that, but it's very much like that buggy. Okay, so there came a time then when nobody had any money, and they were going to cancel the fair, but they decided not to cancel the fair. So they covered up the sign that said 35 cents admission. That's how much it was to get in the fair back then, 35 cents. They covered it up with a big sign that said free fair into the big fair. And everybody got into the fair free that year because there was no money. And they had a really successful fair. So, okay, so time went along and the fair just kept going. But 1949 in November, this association had $11,000, the Fair Association. And so with that $11,000, they purchased 37, and there's a picture of that too. They purchased 37.5 acres of land where the present fairgrounds is today, okay, from Michael Ports. And the Fair Board presented a petition of 1,800 signatures to transfer of the title to the county because the citizens had to vote before they could accept that. And so that passed finally, 1,277 to 636, probably the biggest margin that anything has ever passed. But in 1950, the Fair Board was R.C. Kroger. He raised horses. Some of you remember him. J.R. McNeely. Vice President was Louis Lee from the bank. Hartvickson was the treasurer. Bert Kendall, Earl Boyer, Blondie Rasmussen, John Cruz, and Bill Stewart were all part of the fair then, and worked so hard and did so much. The work on the fairgrounds, okay, they bought this piece of land, right? And just an interesting story that Jack doesn't have in his thing that I read was, so Michael Ports did not want to sell this piece of land. He wanted to keep farming his land. But they had decided that this was the best land for a fairgrounds. And so Judge Arthur Jensen, who, as you know, had a lot to do with all this, wanted to take his land by condemnation, saying that it was needed for the public good. And Bert Kendall did not think that was the fair thing to do. So Bert Kendall went out in the field when he was, and there's a picture of this, Bert Kendall went out in the field, who knows where it is, but it's there.
You want me to flip through it?
We'll just bounce around a
I
bit.
think we'll just, yeah. Too far
Anyway,
away.
Bert Kendall went out in the field, stopped him as he was planting corn, must have been planting at that time of the year, and talked to him and just impressed upon him how much it would mean to the people of this area, to the people of the county, if he would not give his land, if he would sell his land to the, and so finally he was convinced. He sold the land, and so now we have a fairground. So if you can picture, it was a cornfield, right? And it was also a dump site, the acreage that was bought, 37.5 acres. And so this was in the spring, and the fair was coming up, and they were determined they were going to have a fair there. So volunteers came, and I need to switch back to my other thing here, and the volunteers just did an amazing amount of work. They came in with 4-H kids to take down the fencing, because this was farmland, it was fenced, took down all the fencing. They came in and they had to take out all the corn and the corn stalks. Okay, all the work and equipment were donated, right? Corn stalks were shredded, fences removed, and the land was leveled. Bulldozers were donated by Don Schwenker and Babe and Bud Schaefer and Homer Bowman. Riesling Brothers Oil Company donated all the fuel to make this happen. That would have been a lot. Rasmussen Motor Company cut up all of the corn stalks. Bowman Cattle Company donated trucks to haul away the trash. Northwestern Bell Telephone and the City of Maquoketa and Iowa Electric came in and trimmed all the trees. Carl Oberman, Glenn Eaton, Edward Keeney, Bud Schaefer, and Chuck Hensley laid out racetracks, because back then you couldn't have a fair without a racetrack, because harness racing was a really big thing. And like I said, Les Davis came in with large numbers of 4-H and FFA boys. They figured at labor rates back then, $15,000 in labor and services turned this cornfield and junkyard into a fairgrounds. That rate today would have been way, way more than that. But it's just awesome to know, you know, how important it is when citizens pitch in and give of themselves and make things like this happen. I think our latest example of this is Onward, right? When all the people went and donated. Think of what we can do if we all just work together and everybody does just what they can. But this is how all this happened. So the county deed was given to the fairgrounds in 1951. It was presented by Judge Jensen. He was a very happy man, and that signified the fact that the fair had been able to pay off their debt. It was a clear, free deed, and it was then given to the Jackson County supervisors. So we're going to go back and look at some of the pictures from wherever we started off, and just, I think, talk about them. This again is one of the exhibits, as you can see, 1928, Isaac Walton Lee. And I assume that's a large hawk? What is that? Just the big bird in the middle? It's not a bald eagle, but it could be an eagle.
It could be a young eagle.
It could be a teenage bald eagle that doesn't have his white feathers yet. And then, look, they're the Isaac Walton Lee, and they've got a little fish tank down at the bottom for their fish. Okay. Oh, I had to put that in there. That's my great-great-great-grandfather, whatever. And he raced horses. He harness raced and raised horses. And he owned the fairgrounds barn. Whoops, I'm not on the fairgrounds. The fairgrounds barn that's on the fairgrounds, that was his barn, and that was his land, and he had racehorses. So I always have to put him in. Forgive me.
No, they don't forgive us. That's awesome.
And there you can see, and it does not say who this man is, but he's obviously another racer.
Oh, you're still talking.
That's okay. No, I was just going to say Kim Robinson in the back was a blacksmith in Maquoketa. You see his advertising on the stand, and the Business College of Maquoketa. We had a business college at one time, and they're advertising there. Okay, so there are just horses and ponies and old automobiles and just a mix of everything at the fair. And again, some of these don't have dates, so we're guessing which fairgrounds this is on.
1920.
Does
The
it say that?
cars.
Oh, looking at the cars. Yeah, and
Yeah.
you'll have, what I'm saying, you'll have to guess. You don't have
1920s
a
to
year.
30s, yeah. When did they switch to the other side?
Oh, it was much later than
Yeah.
that. It was 1950, they
Okay,
went to the old
that's what I
fairgrounds.
thought.
But, okay, now we need to talk about this one. It says fairgrounds, but I think that is wrong. There was a time after they had to leave where they were, the old fairgrounds on the south side of East Platte Street. Once they had to leave that, they were not gonna let fairs go away, and so they started having fairs at the old ballpark, down by the river. So for several years, there were fairs at the old ballpark. And I do think that that's where this picture is, because we have a lot of information about how they came down to the fairgrounds, and down to the ballpark, and they set light posts and things like that. Ronnie? Roger,
Yeah, I remember down by the river.
do you by the fairground, or by the
And it was
ballpark?
the achievement show, there was a kind of a shed building there,
Okay,
and I don't exactly remember whether or not there was any carnival or anything, but I certainly remember down by the Macocata River where the ballpark was.
good, thank you. And it was
Yeah,
there
we
for
have-
several years.
I have proof that you were there. Well, I have these pictures and Bonnie didn't get them put
I
in
didn't
and I
have
don't think I
time, I'm
can
sorry.
connect, plus they're upside down. But I have a picture of you, let me find it here.
I wish you had a picture of you, Des.
Full family.
It's an
It's a
article.
newspaper article.
It's my Uncle Paul Cornelius, Roger Stewart of Preston with a shorthorn beef heifer, and Velma Tynes.
See if I did put it in.
Uh,
I said that can't be our Roger Stewart.
Oh, sure it is.
Sure.
Who
Back
else?
there, there's other Roger Stewart.
Actually,
I thought, is that our Roger Stewart? As I looked at that picture,
I don't know, but Paul looks a lot younger than you. He's this tall and you're this tall.
but I think I did put that one
I hope so.
in. Okay, maybe we'll come to you, Roger.
Yeah.
Where did you find that?
My grandmother has scrapbooks,
Oh,
And Kathy
and I
Bailey.
just kind of zipped through them.
was that, what year would that have been, you know?
Well, I'm guessing 1949 for some
That
reason.
makes all kinds of sense, yeah.
Oh, Kathy's here.
Because Velma Tynes looks just like Mary, if you know Mary Lou Johnson. That's her mother, Mary's wife.
So those of you who
Yeah.
might be interested, Kathy Bailey, who is
And Paul
our
is-
librarian, who's redone all of our files, has umpty-ump files of the Jackson County Fair. Some are by decades, some are by years, but we have newspaper clippings, we have old photographs, we have a lot of information, like a stack of manila folders, right Kathy, like this?
Yeah.
And she'd be glad to help you find anything you're looking for. But
Yeah,
we
if we can
have,
figure it out.
we have a great deal of information. Okay, next. Glenn Daly, a lot of people remember Glenn Daly.
No relation, unfortunately.
Looks pretty smart there.
He does. And again, the bleachers at the old fairgrounds across the street from where we are
Those
now.
are pretty good.
Pretty substantial, aren't they? And all built with volunteer help. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about some of the performers that they had at the fair. We all know about Tom and Kate Smith, our circus performers. Kate Smith was from Macocata. She married Tom Smith, well, Kate Becker was from Macocata. She married Tom Smith, who was a performer, he and his brothers, in Dubuque. They got their start by going to the sawmills of Dubuque, and they learned to do all of their gymnastics and their high wire walks and things like that over the big piles of sawdust. So if they fell, they had a soft landing. So that is Tom Smith, who's doing the high wire act there. People watching from their cars, that's pretty interesting.
And it's a big ladder.
Yeah, it is. And we have several more of their pictures. So there is Tom Smith, and that is his wife, Kate Smith, I'm pretty sure. And they performed with circuses all over. They performed before the Queen of England. They traveled a lot. They were well known across the whole country. She performed until she fell from trapeze and pretty badly injured herself. At that time, they retired from the circus. They came back from Maquoketa. Jacob Becker, who had the Becker Brick Company that built all of the old buildings and things in Maquoketa and a lot in Preston and other places, lived right at the top of the hill because where we're sitting was part of the Becker Brick Company. Alice knows this. Part of the Becker Brick Company. The huge clay pits were out behind, okay, where they made their bricks 3 at a time because we had the molds. After a while, it was 6 at a time. But can you imagine enough bricks to build something like the First Hotel or the Decker Hotel or the 4 ward schoolhouses, making those bricks by hand, just a few at a time? And the only automation, well, it's not really automation, the only help that they had, there was a huge clay pit, and they had one horse that would pull a boom and mix and go around, and it would mix the clay that they could make into the bricks. But that was all right here, at what we call the historic corner of Maple and Clark Street. But they came back and they went up there. So I know Kathy did it. Any of you ride Tom Smith's horses, ponies? Kathy did. I know.
Barb Pesca
Did you
did.
did? Okay. So after,
up there?
yeah, it was just right out here, and it's hard to recognize because that was a clay pit, and so it had deep ravines cut through it. And Tom and Kate Smith, when they retired from the circus, came back to Maquoketa. They didn't want to leave their circus ponies that were getting older, etc., their dogs, their monkeys. They brought them all back to Maquoketa with them. But to exercise his horses, he would have them at 4 o'clock when school got out. He would have them all saddled, and we would come over to Clinton Engine, only it wasn't Clinton Engine then, and we would ride the ponies through these trails. And that's how he exercised his ponies, and we had a great time. It was wonderful. Black Beauty was my favorite. And that's just some more of his acts. Can't quite describe that one.
Think about that. They're such athletes.
Yeah.
The strength and flexibility.
And then he was known for his dog and pony show, you know, where that expression comes from. They traveled all around the world, really, with their dogs. Can you see how big that dog is? Bigger than my dog. They traveled all over with his dog and pony show. And we do have, in the other museum, we have artifacts. We have the big ladder that some of the little dogs climbed up on, and the cart, and a lot of the things. And I don't know what that one was. It doesn't have a year, it has a date, but not a year, but you can see some of the elephants that came. And then there were awesome parades and floats, and I didn't put many floats in because we've had brown bag lunches just about the parades themselves. So I just put a couple in, but look at how elaborate. That's 1957, Miss Iowa, her float, and that's, I think, the back of the same float. But I wanted to put that one in so you could see the buildings behind, Main Furniture Company. And that's the Fair Association, and of course, everybody was trying to win the blue ribbon for having the best float in that category.
Oh, you did get them in.
I want not all of them. So I've got Will Cornelius in there.
I missed it. I was running a detasseling crew. It was hot. There it is.
Okay, and I said, is this our Roger Stewart?
Really?
That's what I said.
How many Roger Stewarts are there?
I said, can that be him? But the newspaper article says it's Roger Stewart and Paul Cornelius.
And then Velma Tynes.
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't even see her.
She's the third one.
On
Uncle
that end?
Paul is the short one. In 1949, he would have been.
He's gonna take a close look.
That's good, we
He's
need
gonna
to
take a
know.
close look.
Because I said, that can't be him.
Oh, I think it is.
It's very possible. And that's a shorthorn?
So it says, Macocota, pictured above, left to right, are Paul Cornelius of Andrew with a Hereford beef heifer,
Yeah, sure.
Roger Stewart Preston with a shorthorn beef heifer.
That's what we
and
had.
Bellevue.
We got shorthorns.
Well,
So
here's
that's
a
you
close-up
then,
of the
right?
article.
Yes, that's me.
Okay, and
I was younger then.
all of which were adjudged the champion heifers of their respective breeds in the 4-H show held in connection with the Jackson County Fair here. And the reserve champion shorthorn heifer earned for its owner Wayne Wagner a trophy donated by John Goodnow of Macocota. Okay, this is the picture that I was talking about earlier, because my fault, I did not have them in order. This is when the Fair Board actually purchased the land for the present fairgrounds from Michael Ports. And so he had gone out and talked to him and made the deal, even gave him a personal, Bert Kendall, even gave him a personal check for the down payment on the land. And then when it was time, they had the ceremonial picture, right? Presenting him with a check for the 37 tract acre of land. And that is where our golf course is now. And then, like I said, later, I think, well, when everybody voted in November, they had to present it to the public to vote on. Maybe that's not what that is.
Wasn't Ray Krager the one who managed the races too?
He kind of was, because he had Krager over across by the apple orchard. Was that where he was? Okay, he had a sale barn, that's right. And he raced horses, and he didn't, I don't know that he raced them himself, but he trained horses.
But I know my grandfather was always involved there because he worked with Ray a lot.
Okay.
So,
Harness racing was such a big part of the fair here, and it broke my heart when they even did away with the half-mile track. It's not there anymore. Well, it's
sort of.
It's not usable anymore. We just have a quarter-mile track where they race the stock cars. And then this was just a poor newspaper picture, but the 100th anniversary of the Jackson County Fair. So the 100th anniversary would be in
1954.
a library and a mathematician. Look at that. 1954, because it started in 1854. And so I did bring, whoops, I did bring,
Here's this
so
one.
there's a fair book of, thank you. There's 100, these are from the 150-year anniversary of our fair, of the fair itself, from 1854 to 2004. Big celebration years. Then, as I said, they had the 50th anniversary celebration of just the fair on the present fairground. So that was a whole different date. That was in 1950 and a different event. But something that you might want to look at that I brought down was donated in 2008 by Ed Tubbs. And it is the 1889 fair booklet. So we've tried to keep booklets for each year of the fair. We've got a lot of good information. But here it is, this tiny little book, and it just says 5th Annual Fair of the Jackson County Fair Association to be held in Macocota, Iowa, 10, 11, 12, 13 of 1889. But it has premium lists in it. What does those mean? What does that mean?
That's money paid for the ribbon
Okay, and that was a big deal.
award.
But it's okay, but it's fascinating because it has ads for all the little companies. I saw an ad for the lumberyards that we were talking about in Brown Bag Lunch last week, way back when. But feel free to come and carefully look at this wonderful little book because it's a real treasure. So, okay, so anybody have stories?
Is this, oh, you got more.
Oh, do I? Oh, sorry. That's at the end. Okay.
Salvation Army in 1959.
Okay, sorry. I just thought maybe you'd recognize some of these people. Pappy Cassidy is what we called him. My parents were married at his house. Okay, and then this is the beginning where they were starting to build the Pearson Center. Okay? And then that's the completed Pearson Center when it was brand new. So there we are at the beginning. And you can see that there are already bleachers there way before way before the Pearson Center. And the horse barn, and you can see the white restrooms that they built, they're there. But to put those things there, they had to tear down the racing horse barns that were there. So they tore those down to make room for these things. And that is on our present fairgrounds, of course. And I just had to end with our steam engine that we get out and fire up during every fair. And that, I will tell you, came back to the fairgrounds yesterday afternoon from Miles, because the Miles threshers use it for their threshing days. And it comes on a huge semi, as you can imagine. I can't remember how many ton it weighs, but it's big. And it couldn't, because the circus was moving in with all their huge trucks of Ferris wheels, et cetera, the 4-H was moving in, people were moving in all their exhibits. That place was just interesting. And so I knew they weren't going to be able to get down Quarry like they usually did. So we opened the gate out onto Platt Street, and I called them and said, you're going to have to come in that east gate, because it's right there by the machine shed, it only makes sense. But they didn't think they could make the corner. So I waited, and they came, and I had to keep making cars move, because otherwise they had they needed a big place to turn. So they came in that east gate with this huge, long, I should have put some of those pictures, and I did take pictures. Huge, long truck and a trailer. Actually, there were two, because they brought a big John Deere tractor so that they could pull the steam engine once they got it off the track. And as they came in that east gate, they were just not an inch from the fence post. And then there are two big trees on the other side as you come in there. And they probably skimmed the big trees. They barely made it. But boy, those guys they were a trucking company for Miles. And they were awesome. They knew what they were doing. And they had that big thing unloaded and back in our machine shed in short order. Then we had to stop traffic and get them back out on the highway so they could go back to Miles. But it was an interesting, another reason why my pictures aren't in order, because I should have been doing this instead of that, so I apologize. But that's our wonderful steam engine, and hopefully it'll be running during the fair. It takes a lot of wood, a lot of water to make it happen, but it's an awesome thing to have during the fair. Okay, we need stories.
I want to tell one.
Good, thank you, Joy. Thank you.
When I was a kid growing up, they had a kid's drawing, and you had to be there, and you had to get in the drawing, you had to pay a ticket to get in,
Okay.
I think. And my sister won a 2-wheel bike. That was the first one we had on our farm on it, so we all had to learn to ride the 2-wheel bike. But they also gave away a car every year. And
Yes, for a long time.
And your ticket was how you got your name in the thing. So as many nights as you went, or days, you could put your name in there. And you had to be there to win that. And the fairgrounds were packed, everyone that wanted to win that car
Yes, and that's
had to be there.
true today for their drawings today. Yeah. Any other neat stories? That was a neat story. So, since we've got a couple more minutes, you may have
I've
heard
got
my
some stories.
What? Okay. I will tell you my story. You know, back in the day, they would get any famous person they could get to come and be at the fair. I was always at the fair with my parents because they had an exhibit for Wells Plumbing and Heating and whatever. And one of the fun things was one year, everybody came in. This big, they were in tents because there were no buildings, in big tents. And everybody came in because they had a huge faucet suspended in the air, and it looked like just water just pouring down. And you couldn't see how that happened. And of course, there was a plastic pipe inside going up that you couldn't see because of the rushing water. But you know, today we would figure that out quickly. But back in 1950, whatever, not so much.
They have it at the state fair.
And then another day, they had a salesman that came that was selling garbage disposal. And they had it all wired up, and he would put his hand down in the garbage disposal to convince people that they really were not dangerous. And he would put his hand right down in there. So those are the two things I remember. But one night we were going home, and they'd closed up the exhibit, and my dad was taking me home, and we were walking through the parking lot, and I was maybe either 10 or 12, and all of a sudden there was a huge car there, and he backed up, just roared back, and he pinned me between the car behind me and I couldn't move. I mean, I could not move. I was stuck. And my dad was petrified, of course, and he was banging on this big old trunk of this car, banging and trying to get the car to move forward, and nothing was happening. So he went over and he opened the door of the car, and out tumbled Gene Autry, who was the star performer, but he had had a little too much to drink. And so finally my dad got in and moved the car up because he didn't know what was going on. And I was lucky, I just had bruises, bad bruises, but didn't break anything because I'm tough. But anyway, that's my experience. And then Clinton Engine, so probably it was in the 50s, Clinton Engine had a booth there, of course, and Gene Autry, we've got pictures of Gene Autry with some of the Clinton engines from the time he was there for the fair. So Nancy has a story.
Oh, I can't top that.
Oh.
I just remember my parents were very involved in the fair from a very young age. But my mother would tell stories of going to the fair to see the harness racing, because I think my grandfather, Bill Burmel, worked with Ray Krager. And so he'd go and help. I don't remember that he was into horses. But the one thing she did say that I do remember is when they were thirsty, they had a big jug full of water, and they'd all just grab a cup and drink and put the tin cup back down. I think she had one of those cups. Might be at the schoolhouse now. And of course, my dad had Grand Champion. That picture didn't get in.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. I sent you two of Roger. I guess that was more important. But they always showed Intense, and that was in, I thought I saw 1949. But my grandparents on the other side were very into Hereford cattle, so they showed all the time and all over. And then Dad was on the fair board for, I bet, 30 years.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you one thing, if he'd have been on the fair board, you would have your Historical Society edition.
Thank you. We're still fighting with them.
Yeah, but that was not to be, obviously. But I was at the fair all the time.
Yeah. Alice, you were around?
Well,
You were young, but your folks were around.
I could tell you the Tom Smith thing, the thing I remember is I grew up on Clark Street.
Okay.
So at the top of the hill, I knew that they lived there and that Tom Smith and his wife lived there. And they gave me a little Raggedy Ann doll
Did they?
when I was a kid. It was like a cloth doll.
That's,
And I loved it, so I wore it out. Otherwise, I wished I still had it.
I wish
Yeah.
you did too.
Yeah.
Judy, any memories of the fair?
No.
You just remember being busy with the shopper during the fair, right? With all the. Who else has stories?
Can you go back to the elephant photo?
The first one, the very first one?
Well, one of them, it has a,
What else for?
I'm thinking it had a date on it. You said you weren't.
That one.
Not that one. There's
That's
another one.
1868.
the days, like 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Oh, that's more toward
Yeah.
the end, so bear with me here.
Yeah, that's okay. I'm sorry, this is my fault, but I've tried.
There,
I've been working,
Okay,
September 5th, 6th, and 7th, and 8th, yeah.
but
oh,
no
it's a-
year.
Not of the 1870.
Yeah, but
No,
there's no year.
Just those 4 days a month.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, I was trying to make it be a year too.
And then it was always fun to have people, and maybe Roger did this, I don't know. It was always fun to have people talk about when the circus came into town. And usually it was, a lot of times it was during the fair, not always. Sometimes the circus came when it wasn't the fair. But the circus would come in, the circus train would come in from Delmer, down here. They'd have to split it in half and then bring the second half. Then you could sit on the bank out here and watch them unload the elephants. And they'd march the elephants down Main Street and down to the fairgrounds. And the elephants would put up the tent poles. And we have a lot of pictures of those kind of things too, or quite a few. We'd like more if anybody has any. But it was always a big time when the circus train came in and the kids could go out and watch. And then they would be, of course, part of fair parade as well. So, any other stories?
Question,
Ann?
when was the last time that took place, that kind of circus train? Do you know?
When the trains came in?
Yeah.
I don't know. It would have been in the 70s, right? The trains were still coming in the 70s. I didn't live here then, so I kind of don't. Who remembers when the trains stopped coming through Maquoketa? 71 or 70? I would think in the 70s. They're saying 71, 72. It was wonderful. It was fun. And if you got to experience things like that, how fortunate are we to live in a place where we had things like that we could experience, because most people today, you know, don't have a clue. Anyway, if there are no more stories, I would just encourage oh, Ray, go
I
ahead.
have a story.
Well, good, go ahead. This is Ray Scott.
Yeah, I didn't get to show cattle here in Jackson County, but I did do it in Clinton County. But I'm related to this fair because in 1970 or 71, Russell Bush was part of the Dairy 4-H show. And he won the showmanship contest of all the dairy breeds, and he was given a Holstein heifer calf.
Big green.
Well, they milked Jerseys and Guernseys. The Holstein was black and white. But Russell still took the calf home, and Arnie and Eleanor Bush raised that set of cattle. And when Russell decided he did not want to be a dairy farmer, and his father and mother retired from dairy farming, I bought those cows. So it came from the Jackson County Fair.
Fair. Oh, awesome. And I just want you to know, some of Ray's cows have recently come back to Jackson County
They're
and
at-
gone to Moore's.
Out to the more local
Moore's Dairy
grocery
Store.
store.
Yeah, dairy store.
She has a few of my cows.
Yeah, so,
So
thank you.
Russell Bush would be Alice's cousin and Ruth's cousin.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you, everybody who shared. We appreciate that. Forgive me for being a little disorganized. And thank you for helping me. Thank you. One more comment.